let me pivot over quickly, if you don't mind, to the other side of the aisle. We've had a lot of news around Hunter Biden, the son of the current president. Very similar rhetoric, very different situation. Curious to know what you make of that as somebody who's watching Washington.
Right. There's a tie-in, some would suggest, with this also. Some supporters of President Trump have said that each of these announced indictments or a superseding indictment has coincided with very damning evidence with the Hunter Biden or Hunter Biden, President Biden connection, and so on. There is a question why they waited until now, why we're in the middle of the election season, and why this timing seems to be as it is. I can't answer that. But you've asked me a different question a bit. I just suggest there's a tie-in. I don't know what to make of it. I think Hunter Biden seems like a pitiful character. I happen to be friends with one of his primary lawyers, a man I respect greatly, Abby Lowell, and I think that Hunter Biden, as I say, it's a pitiful situation, what's happened in his life and so on. However, I think that when President Biden sort of raised the stakes during the debates during the election and since then, with blanket statements about either Hunter Biden not making any money from China or that he, President Biden, as vice president or as father, never spoke to Hunter Biden about his business dealings, then I think he raised the specter of something suspicious, at least, or questionable, that he has to answer to the American people for. There's all of this talk about impeachment, and some suggestion they'll convene an impeachment inquiry to have more resources to investigate and all of that. I have to say, I'm not a fan of routine use of impeachment. I didn't think.
But are there grounds here? Would there be grounds for impeachment?
There's grounds so far, I think, from what we know, for an impeachment inquiry. I don't know about articles of impeachment, quite frankly, and I'm afraid it would look like a political maneuver, which it might be. I think we have to see how it plays out. The transcript from Devin Archer might offer some additional information. There's also the question about actions that preceded the presidency, whether those are appropriately part of it. I think the House theory, by the way, in the Trump second impeachment would have to hold that President Biden could be subject to impeachment for actions before or after his time in the presidency. That's why I thought it was a very mistaken jurisdictional argument.
Well, I'm not going to ask you how you'll vote in 2024 because that is a personal decision. But what's on your radar that you would put on ours, David, in terms of what you're watching at this point with, very complicated cases?
I think the question is, the interesting factor is President Trump is soaring in the polls, at least among Republican voters. And, he seems to be at least even with President Biden in a head-to-head. Some would suggest that's a sad commentary, but I don't know what to make of it exactly, except I do think, at least where I live in the South, there is a significant contingent that feels these indictments are political weaponization of the Justice Department, honestly, and that it's just piling on. I think they run that risk. When the fourth indictment comes out, I think they're going to run the risk. How many people does anyone know, including Jack the Ripper, who faced, 4
never caught, by the way. So I digress.
I don't know how it's going to play out. I mean, either it's going to be overwhelming and it will, the other Republican candidates are going to speak out more forcefully that this being a distraction. That doesn't seem to hit any of the base as persuasive. Or it's going to, President Trump's going to continue to soar in the polls and he will be the candidate.
Great. Well, I definitely look forward to continuing the conversation with you, and thank you for joining us, David.
Thank you so much.